Okay, it's a 10-minute rant on Conclave. Now, I have to admit, I didn't see Conclave when it came out in the theaters, and it's usually a type of film that I try and avoid seeing in the theaters. I knew what I was going to get into when I watched Conclave. Conclave is one of those movies that really feels like it should be more like a stage play. It really only takes place in a few locations. It's not big and flashy, at least in some places, getting into spoilers, but later. But essentially, yeah, it's about, replacing the Pope. Now, I know nothing about popes, the papacy, Vatican City, Catholicism, even though, I was pretty much one of those super evangelical Christians back in the 90s and 2000s. I didn't really know about all this stuff that's required as far as what to do when they have a new pope. And I don't even know what the pope does, really. And I realize there's going to be a lot of people that are going to leave a lot of negative comments on this because, I can understand that there's... Obviously, the pope is a very influential figure in the Catholic Church. So, essentially, the film opens where we discover that the old pope has passed away due to a heart attack. And so essentially, there's got to be a replacement. Now, the main character is, I always forget how he wants his name pronounced. It's spelled like Ralph, but don't pronounce it that way. This guy's British. So I think it's like Rafe, something like that. But anyway, anything he's in, he always brings his A game, and he's clearly one of the best actors of our time. So he plays this kind of guy who serves in the papal house. And you can tell that he's the guy that is kind of running things and everybody really expects him. A lot of people maybe think he's going to be the Pope. But apparently the popes, they have a big, election. I'm not really certain how this works. And honestly, this film doesn't really take time to explain a lot of things. And when it does, I have to admit it sort of slows the plot down. I think it actually explains what simony is. I've always heard that word pronounced simony. So, So, in the running for this new pope, I honestly don't really remember these guys' names, but I remember more the actors that played them and what sort of stuff they brought to the table on this. And speaking of bringing this to the table, there's a lot of tables in this movie. Yeah, there's a lot of times where characters are at a table talking. There's a lot of showing how this kind of papal election works. This is based on a book, by the way. So so it's adapted, and and a lot of the plots are just basically these guys talking to each other about kind of in the shadows. I'm not going to say it's anything like a gritty crime thriller, but it does show that these guys they have their morality that they are trying to show, and then they have the morality that they actually do, I think is the point of this. I don't know if you were a kid, but going to church, you always dress up in your Sunday best, and you were expected to act a certain different way, and I think these are the reasons why churches are just not really very popular these days, because in this film, they show that all these guys do is churchy stuff, that they live in these things, and they walk around here and they wear their best clothes, and even things like the room that the Pope lives in, there's a wax seal that protects it, and apparently you're not supposed to break that, which becomes an important plot point in the movie. There are a lot of things like this in this thing. What I really like about Fiennes' performance is that he's so not emotional, but apparently there's this time, I think maybe an hour after in the film, where he learns that the Pope has died, he finally allows himself to cry about it, which I think is interesting. Then every once in a while, he'll have a reaction because it's just you can tell that the weight of the world is on his shoulders, and he doesn't really, and he feels so out of it on this. Another thing I really like about his performance is there's a reason why he does not want to be Pope, even though he could easily just do a little bit of canvassing or campaigning or whatever, or how the system works. He could do it if he wanted to, but he sort of talks to his confidants, and here's the thing, no one ever really gets really close in this film. I found that even the humor that they have between the characters when characters are joking around felt really this is how people joke around. This is a really boring, humorless world. And yeah, so Fiennes' character could be Pope, but apparently he's had some sort of, I don't know, crisis of faith or something like that. He doesn't really explain what he means by this. And honestly, I think it's better that it's not shown. This could have been one of those films where, I don't know, like it opens with him seeing a baby die of cancer and he just suddenly doesn't believe in God anymore. They could have done this film like that. And I think perhaps what this film is trying to say that it was his years of indentured service that have really caused him to rethink all this kind of stuff. And based on what he's seen and the fact that getting a new pope involves a lot of ugly canvassing and stuff like that, is really kind of has worn him down mentally as a man. And honestly, I really appreciate this film's pretty candid performance of that. And Fiennes is probably going to get, I don't know, at least an Oscar award nomination, but he's probably won one, honestly, hasn't he? I don't know. I feel like this film is an Oscar bait film. I feel like this is one of those films where you're just gonna like put it out there. It's full of like, it is full of white guys. There is like, I think, an African pastor that is, or not pastor, there's a word for this, but yeah, he's kind of in the running for, to be the new Pope. And I am just gonna assume that, here's the thing, since I don't really know much about the papacy, I actually believe there's a line in the film where someone says, we haven't had an Italian Pope in 40 years. And I kind of went like, well, I wonder who that was. And I didn't bother to do the research on it. And I kind of realized like, that's strange that this film deals with the a new appointment of a pope, and honestly, wouldn't even know how many popes we've, have poped in the past decade or something like that. I still remember Pope John Paul II. I remember him, but that's about it. I mean, I would not be able to name the popes like I could name the presidents in the last decade or something like that. I just can't. But so seeing this kind of setup here is really interesting. And I recommend you kind of see this. And now I'm kind of getting into spoilers here. Basically, what I thought, this film does something later on that I really appreciate. And again, this is a spoiler, so if you don't want a warning, I will say like, hey, don't watch past this point if you're interested in seeing the film. There is a twist at the end, and actually kind of two twists. In one of them, there's apparently a car bomb that goes off while they're having this election and punches a literal hole in the room they're in. And I really like the symbolism of that. It kind of shows that there's no way these guys can sequester themselves from the rest of the world. And yet they try to. There's apparently like something going on with a lot of protesting and stuff like that. I don't know if they really went into detail or that I didn't really pay attention. But essentially the thing is Muslim related. I don't know if I pronounced it. Muslim related. Okay. I've heard there's two different pronunciations of that, and I hope I have not offended anybody. I've already talked about this in Catholicism, so I don't want to offend anybody that believes in Islam and stuff. So here's the thing. There's a guy here who is very much Islamophobic, and he's might be in line to be the Pope. And I think this is where Fiennes actually goes like, okay, I'm gonna have to be the Pope because honestly, everyone else is just so bad at it that they're just gonna screw it up. And I know I'll probably screw it up too, but at least I can have control over that. And then the person that they do appoint for the Pope turns out to be intersex. Oh yeah. And honestly, I really like that. I kind of go like, okay. I kind of appreciate this ending on here. And I thought like, okay, I think this could actually be a better world after all. And so is that a happy ending for this story? Well, I hope so, because I'm not really sure how this film is trying to frame this thing, but I do like that sort of, that kind of ending there. So yeah. Anyway, so go see Conclave if you are willing to sit through something like this. I basically kind of did something while I was watching it and just kind of was listening to the conversation, but yeah, I might have missed important plot points. But check it out. It's a pretty good film.